When the days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and you never reach out again, the avoidant goes through a psychological awakening that changes everything they thought they knew about relationships and their own emotional patterns. Your permanent absence becomes the mirror that finally forces them to see themselves clearly, and what they discover is more devastating than any confrontation or emotional plea ever could have been. They realize they were never independent. They were dependent on you. The crushing realization hits that their entire sense of independence was built on the foundation of your consistent pursuit and emotional availability. They discover that what they thought was self-sufficiency was actually them leaning heavily on your willingness to always be there, always reach out first, and always do the emotional work to maintain connection. Without your constant initiation of contact, they feel lost and disconnected in ways they never experienced when they were supposedly independent. They realized their independence was an illusion that required your dependence to function. You were the one remembering important dates, initiating conversations, and maintaining the relationship infrastructure while they coasted on your efforts. The silence forces them to confront how much of their emotional regulation actually depended on your presence and attention. They discover they don't know how to feel valuable or important without someone consistently demonstrating that they matter through pursuit and investment. Their fake independence crumbles when they realize it was built on your reliable emotional labor. They understand that love has expiration dates. For the first time in their lives, they're forced to confront the reality that love isn't infinite and patience isn't unlimited. Your permanent absence teaches them that even the deepest love can die when it's consistently rejected, dismissed, or taken for granted. The person who they thought would always be there simply stopped being there. This realization is earth-shattering because their entire relationship strategy was built on the assumption that they could take indefinite breaks from people, and those people would always welcome them back. They believed love was something they could store on a shelf and access whenever convenient, but your silence proves that love requires ongoing maintenance and reciprocation to survive. They're learning that their hot and cold patterns don't create excitement and mystery, they create exhaustion and eventual abandonment. The timing of love matters, and they waited too long to reciprocate yours. By the time they realized what they had, you had already realized what you deserved. They recognized they destroyed their own safe harbor. Your permanent absence makes them realize they didn't just lose a relationship, they destroyed their emotional safe harbor, the one person who could regulate their nervous system and provide the unconditional acceptance they desperately needed. You weren't just a romantic partner, you were their emotional home, and they set that home on fire through their own behavior. They discover that your love provided them with psychological safety they can't replicate anywhere else. Being around you allowed them to feel calm, understood, and accepted in ways they've never experienced before or since. Without that stabilizing presence, they feel emotionally adrift and psychologically homeless. The silence forces them to acknowledge that they had everything they needed for emotional healing and growth, that they chose fear and self-protection over the vulnerability required to receive that healing. They rejected their own salvation and now have to live with the consequences of that choice. They understand the difference between solitude and abandonment. Your permanent absence teaches them the devastating difference between choosing to be alone and being left alone by someone who mattered. They realize that the loneliness they feel now is qualitatively different from their chosen isolation because it carries the weight of genuine loss rather than the comfort of control. They used to take pride in their ability to be alone, but now they understand that solitude feels completely different when it's the result of someone giving up on them rather than their own choice to maintain distance. The silence has transformed their relationship with aloneness from a source of strength into a reminder of what they lost. This forced abandonment becomes more painful than any emotional confrontation because it's not dramatic or temporary, it's just the quiet, permanent absence of someone who used to care. They realize that being forgotten feels worse than being fought with or argued about. They realize their patterns were visible and predictable. Your complete withdrawal forces them to confront the reality that their behavior patterns weren't as mysterious or complex as they thought. They were actually transparent and predictable. You didn't leave because you couldn't understand them. You left because you understood them perfectly and decided their patterns weren't something you wanted to live with. They realized you weren't confused by their hot and cold behavior, their mixed signals, or their emotional unavailability. You were educated by it. Every push and pull taught you something about their character and capacity for growth, and you eventually concluded they weren't capable of the changes necessary for a healthy relationship. The silence proves that their avoidant tactics weren't effective relationship management tools. They were obvious defensive patterns that pushed away the exact person they most wanted to keep. You saw through their strategies completely and chose to stop participating in dynamics that weren't serving your well-being. They discover that some people actually mean it when they say they're done. Your permanent absence teaches them that not everyone makes empty threats or uses ultimatums as manipulation tactics. When you said you were done, you actually meant it, which shatters their assumption that people always come back if you wait long enough or provide minimal effort at reconciliation. They realize that your boundaries weren't negotiation starting points or dramatic performances designed to get their attention. They were actual limits that you enforced through action rather than words. This discovery is devastating because it means they can't manipulate or charm their way back into your life like they've done with others. The silence proves that some people have the strength to walk away from love when that love isn't being reciprocated appropriately. You demonstrated that self-respect is more important than hanging on to someone who doesn't appreciate what you offer, which is a level of emotional maturity they've never encountered. They understand they were replaceable while you were irreplaceable. Your absence forces them to realize the devastating asymmetry in how you experienced each other. While they can find other people to provide attention, validation, and companionship, they can't find anyone who understands them, accepts them, and loves them the way you did. You were irreplaceable to them, but they were replaceable to you. They discover that your specific combination of patience, understanding, emotional intelligence, and unconditional acceptance was rare and precious in ways they never appreciated. Other people don't love them through their difficult moments, don't understand their psychology, and don't provide the unique emotional regulation you offered naturally. The silence makes them realize they lost their best chance at experiencing genuine love and acceptance because they took it for granted when it was freely given. They destroyed something irreplaceable through their own fear and emotional immaturity. They face the reality that they may never get another chance. Your permanent silence forces them to confront the possibility that they've lost you forever, that there won't be another opportunity to get it right, and that they'll have to live with the regret of destroying the best relationship they ever had. This isn't a temporary break or a strategic distance, it's permanent loss. They realize that some mistakes can't be undone, and some relationships can't be repaired once certain damage has been done. Your silence suggests you've reached a point of no return, where forgiveness isn't possible and reconciliation isn't desired. The finality is terrifying. The absence of any hope for reunion forces them to accept that they'll carry the regret of losing you for the rest of their lives. You've become the one who got away, not because of circumstances beyond their control, but because of choices they made that pushed away the person who loved them most. Your permanent absence becomes their greatest teacher, showing them exactly what they lost and why they lost it, but teaching these lessons too late for the knowledge to matter.